All right. Should be live. Hopefully. Let me check real quick. Yep. Looks that way. All right. 13 love, 13 knowledge, 13 wisdom, 13 respect. This is Your Creation 13. My name is Starseed Bey. Today, we'll be doing this live discussion. We'll see who pops in here. It's entitled Creating Narratives for Spiritual and Political Awareness or followers, right? A lot of people are following what they're being told, following lies, being obsessive over a lot of things as well. And I think it's important to really sit back and observe the chaos and confusion, right? Sometimes it's so very important to be the observer instead of being the follower, or generating a leadership that is based around followers. Hey, how's it going, Miracles of Love? It's so important to realize that, because a lot of leaders right now, there's a lot of ones that just look for fame, for fortune. There's ones who have very selective narratives. That's a huge one. That's something that I have been pretty big on looking at that observation of a narrative, right? Born and raised in a Christian home, so a lot of my teenage and in my 20s was based on the narrative of being a Christian. And eventually, when I had an awakening in 2010, I had to break out of that narrative and start learning about multiple narratives, and then kind of putting things together, and realizing that life is a narrative, right? You have your narrative, and then there's so many other narratives that you can be a follower of, you can be a leader of. This goes into the process of a little series that I'm trying to figure out how to create about identity, right? Is that we choose a program based upon a skill set, and then we build a character like a video game, right? We are a character, and we build a persona to interact with people. And it's very, very interesting. But the main reason why I'm making this live video is because of the spiritual community as a whole. Like, the spiritual community is huge, from religion to ETs to multidimensional. You go into quantum mechanics, right? There's all these things in that community, right? It's huge. It is huge. And then we got the political agenda, and that really ties in also with spirituality as well. Politics is a dirty game, but on the flip side, if you didn't have politics, then you wouldn't have things going. You wouldn't have things roll out from a business perception as well. There's always going to be business, no matter what. Unless we have a huge collapse, we get back into nature. Woohoo! Nature's waiting for us. But until then, as far as business strategies go, there's always going to be some kind of political agenda, good or bad, political gain, good or bad, things of that nature. It's important to be the observer of that. It's important to be cautious of what you follow. So, and that meaning protest and blogging and creating selective narratives in that field, right? Whether you're an expert of it or not. It's hugely important to realize the agenda that's at play. It's huge. Like, I've never seen an agenda like this. Like, to me, it's like the Twilight Zone. I'm not going to get to details because everybody knows what's going on in the world. At least I hope you are. Otherwise, you're living in a cave, and That's probably what's best at the moment. A lot of people have been living in their caves, being stuck at home and things like that nature. And people don't want to go back to work either. Hopefully they've created alternatives. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about that right now. The alternative is important right now. I've been looking at this as well, right? A lot of people are looking for alternatives for jobs. There's a thing that I saw today about teachers saying that they're not going to work if that takes place, right? I'm not going to say what it is. You guys know what it is, but a lot of people do not want to work if that thing takes place. And I think it is preparing people to start creating their own school curriculums, to start creating their own way of healing people, becoming a doctor. Now, I'm not saying you should just become a doctor out of the blue. Research is key, lots of studying and things of that nature, but we do have the ability to take care of ourselves, right? The agenda is to make you feel you need to rely on someone else, when at the end of the day, if you're secure about yourself, mature about yourself, and willing to learn and grow in all things, you can take care of yourself, right? In all fields. I think sometimes the best way to take care of yourself is being the observer of that, right? It's huge. It's important, right? That's what I was thinking about today. I was like, man, wouldn't it be awesome if you could just create your own hospital within your house, right? It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to do what the doctors do, right? Unless it's a major surgery and things of that nature. But that, on the flip side, goes back into the spiritual awareness of things, right? Because we got Reiki healing, we got sound healing. What you eat is huge, right? If you're eating crappy food that has a whole bunch of words on the ingredients you don't even know how to pronounce, you're creating a chemical imbalance within your body. So it's important to realize that you can improve yourself just by your will and intent, right? Being the observer, right? Taking time to do a self-reflection of your life and where you're at, where you want to be. And I would hope over time you would mature and kind of be aware of that, right? We've all been kids, right? Teenagers, and then people who watch me, right, are in their 20s, and you just continue to grow and learn about life. I've had a maturity boost this past year that's really allowed me to see things differently, and that's where I kind of discovered this narrative thing. Heard this from my brother, True Seeker, with his True Seeker podcast, and he was talking about narratives, and that just kind of clicked with me. I'm like, wow, man, narratives, right? Everything is a narrative, and people fall into it. People fall into it in so many things, right? So we can go into the spiritual element of things. I'm an open book. I look at everything. So I can bounce back and forth. So if you look at the spiritual community, we'll go into more of the new age element of things with ETs and things like that. It really people have created a narrative that that there's these beings that are helping us and aiding us. I'm not saying they don't. I've had my personal encounters, so there's definitely a lot of things going on in the spiritual realm. In the multiverse realm, there's things that are happening we can't see, but you can feel it if you're empathic. I'm very empathic, and I've had my encounters of it. but the narrative is consistent. There's always this galactic federation of light deal and things of that nature. But I look at things very realistically about how people talk about things, and it's a lot of talk, right? It's a lot of talk. A lot of good information, a lot of false information, and as a whole, I think it brings a lot of hope for people sometimes, but I think people are really looking for a validation, right? People want to see the world change, and a lot of times people put their faith in invisible forces, right? Again, born and raised in a Christian home, so Christ is my foundation at the end of the day, right? I have built such a strong faith in the relationship with Christ that will continue to be my narrative, despite no matter what I learn as I expand and grow. I think it's important to have a go-to foundation to keep you balanced and centered, right? Maybe if I was raised differently, it could have been differently, right? My culture is Western culture, so I'm used to that element. But to me, it keeps it simple, right? Christ's message was very simple, and I think it's important to be aware of that, because when you start talking about this galactic federation of light and this galactic battle that's taken place, right? It gets very confusing, and it generates allegiances in this in the narrative, right? A lot of it's imagination, because it's just a narrative we've heard, right, about this Orion, the Orion constellation, and the Republic within that, right? Even the Bible talks about Orion. I've done channeling sessions with Orion, and there's an agenda there, right? But it's, even if you do the observation, you use the channeling, you do the astral traveling, and you learn about all these things about the Orion Council, the political war within Orion, the agenda for the human race, and then the Orion Sirius battle that I was shown through remote viewing and channeling. It's huge. It's huge. And when you see what is unfolding down here, you can see why that narrative for the Orion Council, it has an agenda, right? You hear about the blonde-haired beings, right? They have been heavily involved with the world leaders down here, right? And I'm just speaking that from the narratives that I've seen from other people. That's all we can go by. Our history has shown, like with the Nazis, and Hitler was obsessed with these blonde-haired beings, which would be from Orion. So there's an agenda with that, right? There's an agenda with that. Same as Sirius. There's a lot of interesting things with Sirius. And you can do research from the human narratives of Sirius, but you can also look at the channeling documentations and remote viewing, at least from what I've seen, and there's people that have had similar experiences about the cross between Sirius and Orion, right? The consistent battles. And it just seems to just kind of play out into all of these beings as well. All of these ET beings that all over the place, right? All over the place. And it's not just about angels and demons anymore, because we have identities. We have identities for these beings now, right? You can flip these angels and demon things, and we have actual beings that we can put faces with, narratives with, right? Just like right here, right? I got all these Lyran, or there's another person that said it a little differently. Lorraine, I think someone said Lorraine. Or Lyran. I don't know. Lyran just sounds like something, but the lion, the cat beings, there's a special place in my heart for them because of me doing a deep meditation through my matrix system, right? Through the soul matrix, and discovering a lot of lives, or at least being the observer of these lives as a cat being, right? I've always been fascinated with cats. I love my cat children, and there's just always something familiar, and just I feel comfort being around cats. And cats are very symbolic throughout history, right? They're known as protector of portals. They're known as protectors to keep you safe from evil spirits. I guess I can say that, evil spirits and things like that. So there's a lot of history with cats. So I really feel that that's hugely important, and that's why I kind of post these pictures. Good old Thundercats on there. Kind of give you a general idea, that there's a lot more to us than just this human experience, and laughable too, and sad at the same time. Just seeing all the things that humanity fights over is uncanny to me, right? It's just bizarre, to say the least, on so many things that humans fight over. The perspective that humans give things. This goes into idol worshipping, right? Because a lot in the spiritual community, there's a lot of worshipping, a lot of outside worshipping, right? That's where it goes back into Christ, and Christ saying, hey, everything is within you. It's not outside you. Anything that's outside yourself can be a idol, can lead you astray, can keep you away from discovering you, right? This is just a meat suit holding your soul. This meat suit's not you. Your soul is what's you, the real you, and the only way you can discover the real you is going within you, right? And discovering the kingdom of heaven within you, and discovering the spirit guides and the different kind of messengers, right? Because when they talk about angels, they're really just talking about a messenger, and it doesn't really distinguish where the messenger comes from, right? Because when you say angel, you think, oh, from above. But throughout the Bible, it talks about these messengers, and these messengers seem to be in human form. So it's just a messenger with a message, whether it be in physical form or spiritual form, which is a form of channeling as well. So it gets to be very interesting, right? The narrative gets huge, right? And at the end of the day, it is your narrative, right? It is your narrative that you're experiencing and encountering. In life, I think it's so very important to be aware of that. Because as you get older, and this is what I'm experiencing, as you get older, life gets shorter. And when life gets shorter, you really begin to observe your life and go, hey, how do I want to spend my time? What do I like doing? How can I help people in their life, right? I always looked for a mentor of some kind, and at the end of the day, right, my mom was a big help in my life, and she was my mentor, but Christ was also my mentor, and that's just because I created that personal relationship with that Christ character, right? The invisible best friend that so many people talk about. But I think it's important to kind of look at that as a whole, because it is an invisible friend. It is, right? No matter how much you want to make it real, I haven't seen anybody that's posted a picture with Christ standing right next to them in the physical realm. So, it's the imagination that's at play. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having that awareness of the imaginary friend, right? But there's some kind of divine presence that surrounds that, right? Because, when I have conversation with Christ, go into deep meditation, visually through the imagination, seeing that Christ being in front of me, it becomes real to me, generating the narrative that it's real, right? And it's only real to me, right? That creates the personal experience. And I think that's so very important to realize it is your personal experience. And all we can do is share our experiences. And I think once people start to realize that it's a personal experience, and to kind of look past the selective narratives that are at play right now, there'd be a lot less dividing, because that's what people fight about all the time, right? Christ is my strength and foundation, but yet you talk about something different through someone's selective narrative, they're gonna just rip you one, man, right? There's no love, honor, and respect in a selective narrative. There isn't, because if you're not with them, then you're against them. And that's selective. And in turn, go back to politics, they have a selective narrative and selective agenda. And what is that? So you've researched the United States, the origin of the United States, and you will discover that the United States is a business. The United States is a business, right? So we have the land that has been named America by the settlers who created the business by force, the business of the United States. And that's what we have right now. So when you look into that history, you can see it. There's history of the business of the United States. The business of the United States has everything a business has. They have a CEO, which is the president. They have selective doctors that are on their payroll. Do research on that. They have selective school curriculums. Do research on that. They have selective anything that is government funded is owned by the business of the United States, right? This is why it's so important to be the observer and realize that when they talk about doctors, it is under the business of the United States. If you do not work for the business of the United States, you are considered, what's the word I'm looking for? You are considered an independent doctor. So you're businessing yourself outside the business of the United States. That's huge to realize, right? That's why there's such a huge divide and misinformation about everything, because it's a selective narrative, right? It is a business known as the United States, right? That's what's taking place right now. Until people can realize that the United States is a business and why everything is the way it is now, you can break free from that, right? The only thing that the United States owns you by your Social Security, right? That's fact, right? Your parents gave our rights away, and that's when we became workers for the government known as the United States. Let's see. Only, so that's all I see for your name. Says, are you still on a vegan diet? I never call myself a vegan. I call it natural eating. But yeah, since 2010, I quit eating beef and pork. Just stopped. And that was the hardest thing ever, because before then, all I ate was hamburgers and fries. Favorite thing in the world. But when I had my spiritual awakening, just cold turkey, quit eating beef and pork. Ate chicken and fish for a little while until it just kind of dawned on me. I was like, hey, I don't really need this anymore. So I got rid of chicken and then got rid of fish, and still been doing the same thing ever since, right? And it's hugely important, since we're talking about food, it's hugely important to do the research on your body type, right? I did research on my body type because I was doing a lot of spiritual practices and had the belief at the time, but built faith over time. Okay, I built faith that my genetics would change, right? That my genetics would change over time. So I had to do a lot of research. I had to realize that you cannot just eat fruits and veggies. That will destroy you. It will. So you have to look at supplements, tons of different kind of vitamins and minerals to keep your body going, because that's, at the end of the day, your body needs vitamins and minerals to survive, right? And that's why a lot of people who eat meat did okay, because they were absorbing from the meat all the vitamins and minerals from that animal. The meat itself is not nutritious because it's death and it molds in your stomach, but you absorb the vitamins that were from that meat. So you're absorbing the vitamins, but you're also absorbing the parasites and the bacteria as well. So that's where you got to do the research. And that's where I put two and two together. I'm like, oh, okay. So you got to do your research and be very cautious on how you eat. That's why so many people fail when they stop eating meat, because they just think, oh, hey, I can just eat fruits and veggies and call it good. So unless you're growing your own fruits and veggies and you're picking it and eating it that day, you're not getting no nourishment from fruits and veggies, because especially ones in the supermarkets, it's already dead. It's been traveling for like 6 days, 7 days. It's dead food. It's just dead food. I only eat frozen vegetables, and because it's picked, boiled, frozen, done. So at least you get somewhat nourishment out of it. But lately I've just been drinking lots of natural juices to keep that going. Cashews are my best friend. Lots of vitamins and minerals in there. And just be observant of what you eat. So yeah, been going strong ever since. So that'd be what, 11 years. So yeah, 11 years, man. If I can do it, you guys can do it. You just gotta do the research. And it took a whole year of detoxing too, man. A whole year. I was sick as a dog, but that just kind of shows you all the chemicals that get put in your body from unnatural foods. Because I ate processed foods, I ate everything that was unhealthy, fast food, the whole shebang. And then 2010 spiritual awakening, done, just like that, right? And that was pretty wild, to say the least. So yeah, and that's just because, you know, I had that spiritual encounter that was my own. A lot of it could be labeled imagination, but it was kind of a forced imagination, because, you know, you hear all the stories. You hear these stories about, oh, hey, Christ visited me. Hey, this ET being visited me. Told me about all these things and things of that nature, right? And then you have your own encounter of that, your own experience of that, and then you go, wow, right? Now I have a testimony about that. And that's what happened to me, right? That's what happened to me. Had a really personal encounter with Christ and a couple beings, and, you know, they told me how to stop eating meat and learn about the ways of the world, and my spiritual journey began. And that's pretty crazy. It really is. And it's been up and downhill battle, but you can see it in the world that there's a lot of changes going on. Like, man, my ears have been buzzing through the roof past couple of days. They always have, but it's just been really, really strong. There's a lot of things that are happening. Like, I swear we're living in a Twilight Zone right now. Like, legit. Living in the Twilight Zone. I'm just waiting just to wake up one day and just see ships all over the sky, you know. It's just, oh man, there's just so many weird things going on. That's bizarre. It really is. And I think that's where the narratives come into play, and being aware of that. Not many people are talking about narratives, because people are so focused on their selective narrative. People are so focused on what they've built and created through the spiritual community, which is everything. Spiritual community is religion and New Age and Next Age and ETs and all that stuff, all in one group. And then the political agenda, both good and bad, of how the world is governed. You got to have a government of some kind, right? It's just the people in those chairs should not be in those chairs. So we're just watching things just go up and down. But people are really becoming incredibly aware and smart, and educating themselves, and seeing the agendas open up. Like, it's so funny, because when I do watch the elect president, because if you didn't know, we have an illegal president right now. That's why he's called an elect. He's an illegal president. I do the research on that, and that's huge. We don't have a perceived leader right now, right? So it makes it interesting, right? To me, I just let that narrative go, but I do watch things from time to time. And they just flat out tell you what their agenda is. Like, it's like they can't lie. It's like wherever this thing is going and escalating, right? Because this planet is changing, and I think it's because of the narratives are just the stream of hopes and what people want to see in the world is changing so drastically. I think people are getting to the point where they can't lie. They're not allowed to lie, so they have to tell you what their agendas are. And just be the observer, and you will hear everything unfold right before your eyes. And it's bizarre. They're holding nothing back. They flat out tell you, hey, this is what we're doing. This is the outcome of it, and what are you going to do about it? So therefore, that's where, as the people, as independent people, we need to create our own narratives outside the business of the United States, right? Again, the United States is a business that has the exact same things as other independent businesses. They have their own selective doctors and judges and anything that is government based is owned by the business of the United States. So if you're under that, you're going to have to follow the rules, just like a business, right? Just like any business, they have their own set of rules that you have to follow as in a employer, right? As an employer. So that's why there's a lot of things that are going on now. You got to do your research on of like, hey, I am not employed by the United States. You got to think about that. You're not employed by the business of the United States. You have a Social Security card that registers you, but you're not employed by the United States. So that's huge. That's huge. The research is key in that. Not many people look at that or know about that. But it's huge, and I think once people catch on to that, things will change drastically. They really will, as well. So, man, I don't think there's nothing else unless if there's anybody has any questions or concerns about anything that's been discussed on this. I like to put all these pieces of the puzzle together because I watch so many people that have very selective narratives on things that it becomes personal, but it does not generate a joining or a collaboration of people together, right? Because when you have a selective narrative, it divides and separates the people, which is what we continuously see, which is what I experience, right? Because you go into the community, they have selective narratives. You bring something different to the table. More than likely, if you're not part of their selective narrative, again, you're either with them or you're against them. So it creates a conflict as well. So it's very interesting. It really is, right? I'm an observer. I think my job is that to be the observer, because I think it's important to be the observer, and try to put everything together, right? I'm trying to figure out how we can work together, right? Is it even possible to work together, right? This earth is a school. This earth is a school, and it could be designed this way, where you choose a program, you choose a character, just like a video game. You create a character, create a persona that you can be as you play in the programs that you select. And then after your time here on Earth is done, you've been through the school of Earth, and then you move on. So there's so many weird analogies and weird perspectives and perceptions on how that looks, right? So many people are curious about what happens after we pass away, right? I've been looking at that too, just kind of like, man, what about if I left this world tomorrow? Hopefully not. I got a lot to do. But if I left this world tomorrow, how would that be? How would that what would that look like? Right? That you just, a being or something comes up to you and say, hey, man, you're done. It's time to move on next. and there's no turning back. There's no turning back. You're done in this reality, right? You're done in this reality, and you move on. You move on. And that can be a scary thought. It can be a very scary thought. And I think if you really look too much into it, it can be scary. But I think it's scary because the narrative that's been created, right? The narrative of death. Death is an illusion. You just move forward in life, right? That was Christ's simple teaching, right? That's what he taught the world. The kingdom of heaven is within you. I am within you. And that's it, right? That's it. So I think with that simple guidance, you can move forward. And I think that's why it's so important to clear yourself, create a spiritual awareness and practices to understand that and have a better transition after this life, right? Because people take this life very serious, and I think if those people were to lose their life like that, they may have a lot of regrets, and they would want to go back, and then they wish that they did other things, and it just makes your transition to the next life a lot harder. I've been watching this Korean drama called The Goblin, and it's basically a story about this samurai that was protecting this queen. I believe protecting the queen. It just starts off really like, bam, there you are. Don't really know what's going on, but towards the end, this was like really ancient times. I think it was like 200 years or more. No, it had to have been way before that. But anyways, he ended up getting stabbed, and then they left him in the field. He died. They buried him. But then a curse was put on him. That's why he's known as the Goblin. And it's his destiny if he ever wants to, because he just lives forever. He just keeps living and living and living. He doesn't die until someone can pull that sword out. So he was told that he will meet the Goblin Bride. He will meet a Goblin Bride. And he does actually find her. She has a tattoo. She was born with a tattoo of a goblin. And things like that. And she wasn't supposed to be. She was supposed to die before she was born. And she just kept on living. So now she can talk to spirits and help them transition. And she was able to see that sword. So beautiful story there. But there's also the Grim Reaper in that story as well. And in Korean dramas, they have had a lot of stories about moving on into the next reality. So with that one, with the Grim Reaper, they get you in that room. So when you pass, the Grim Reaper comes and visits you, and will help you see things. Like there was a doctor who had overworked himself, and he passed away. So he didn't realize he passed away. So he was in the emergency room, and he thought he was helping, but then he found out that he died, and he's like, I'm dead? He's like, what? And he ended up helping one more person before he passed, because he was working on a patient as he was overworking himself. So he ended up passing away, but he was able to help that person before he left, and he was happy. He was like, is he going to be okay? He's like, yep, your patient will be all right. And he's like, all right, let's go to the next world. So the Grim Reaper will take these people into this room and will say, all right, so I need you to drink this, and you're going to forget everything that you did in this life. And some of them were like, well, I don't want to forget. And the Grim Reaper said, trust me, you want to forget. because where you're going, the less you remember, the better. And you can make you think about that. It can make you think about that. But you got to think, if you have all of the experiences and the emotions of this reality, and you take that with you, and then you're born into another reality, and you have all the memories here, you're going to feel regret. You're going to feel, you're going to miss the people that you knew, the family you had, the children you had, all the memories and relationships and things of that nature, right? Man, this would be a good video just by itself. So I'll probably do that next time. But man, could you just imagine having all of the memories of your past in your new life, and because you had it would become a burden at the end of the day. You had all the burdens of your past life. You could not experience your new reality and your new life. It would ruin your new experience, right? It would ruin your new experience. And I think, oh man, that is something that we should be taught, right? Hey, when you move on, you need to let go. You need to let go so you can move on. So it's very fascinating. I'm a very deep thinker, and I really do observe all these things. Curious, because eventually we all will be visited by a Grim Reaper of some kind, I'm sure. That will help us transition. It could very well be the spirit guide that helped you. So, it could be Christ for me. It's hard to say. My goal is to live forever, right? My goal is to live forever. That would be amazing. But with great power becomes great responsibility. So that would be huge. If anybody's watched Star Trek, The Next Generation, the character named Q, interesting character, but I would love to have that ability, just to be able to go anywhere in time, help out, different kind of races that are going through things, be able to chill and do stuff that that I love for a little bit, and that just kind of just travel back and forth through things. That'd be amazing. I would love that, man. I would love that. So interesting conversation as a whole. So let me go ahead and get off of here, unless somebody has anything. But at the end of the day, be the observer, right? Observe the narratives that are being expressed to you. Observe the narrative of the faith you have, right? Observe the narrative of where you're at in life, and observe the narratives of humanity as a whole. And when you do that, you're going to see life differently. At times, you may feel like you don't belong. But on the flip side, that's where the change is going to take place, because you are outside the narrative. And you realize that a lot of these narratives are all the same thing, just being spoken in different words and cultures. But it's like unplugging yourself from the matrix. Once you get out of that selective narrative, you unplug yourself, because now you see all the narratives. And when you see all the narratives, then you go, whoa, okay, what's going on here? What's real? What's fake? You go into the spiritual community, a lot of these people are talking about ETs and Christ and God and angels and all these things, but they're in the imagination. If you're empathic, you feel them. I feel them. I sense them. At times I see them. But I don't have any pictures or proof. A lot of these people don't have pictures or proof. And that's where it becomes the imagination. It is. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I think that's the product that people are going through right now in their selective narratives, is that if you call it an imagination, it's not real. And that's not the case. What is imagination? That's where creation happens, right? You want to create a vehicle. You want to create a cartoon or a movie. It sparks from the imagination. And then with the imagination, you have all the blueprints. So you start writing it down in this physical reality. And then you hire the people you need. And then you start building. And then bam, your imagination has just manifested into this reality, right? That's real. But I've yet to see ETs and Christ and angels and things like that in this physical reality, right? A lot of people will claim, hey, I speak for Christ or I speak for the Creator, but I look at it this way, is if that person is not there, it creates gossiping, and you're putting words in people's mouth. So you have to be careful on how you present that. So if you notice with me, Christ is my foundation and strength in my life, right? But I'm not going to speak for Christ, but I can share my experiences that I've had with Christ as my guide. And I think that's huge and important to share with the world as well. So anyways, I could start other topics, so I'm going to get off of here. So love yourself, please. Keep shining bright. Keep being the observer. Keep learning, growing, maturing. Do research. When you see things in the political realm, do research. Find out the origin of things. And when you're in the spiritual communities, again, be the observer. You're always going to have your own kind of faith and belief, and I do encourage people to grow in it, but also expand in it, right? The process of belief is something you just don't know if it is real or true, but once you start having the personal encounters, your belief will change into faith. So as soon as you start having the spiritual encounters, it becomes faith, and then your faith will continue to build from that as well. And that's huge, and that's important. I always encourage people to build in their faith, because that's going to help you mature in life, and to see things differently as well, right? It's always good to have a form of spiritual faith in your life, because that's going to give you a foundation to fall back on when you go through life. Because life is a challenge for sure. Life will always have its ups and downs, so that's why it's important to have a spiritual foundation to fall back on, so you can spend that time in meditation or in prayer to kind of relieve some of the stress of reality as well. So yeah, so like I said, I could talk about topics forever. How's it going, Devoid? Glad you enjoyed the conversation. So thank you all for joining. Love yourself, keep shining bright, and I'll talk to you all later as soon as I figure out how to turn this off again. All right, have a good night, guys.